All right, hello everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Wu Can Cook. Today we're doing a Thai street food dish called Pad Gra Prow, which is essentially like ground chicken that's stir-fried in a couple of things. Today we're going to be doing that with some Thai chilies, shallots, and Thai basil. More specifically, or I guess more iconically, you'll probably see it referred to as like Thai basil chicken or something in that realm. Usually, most traditionally, you will see it done with another Thai basil called holy basil, which is a little bit more difficult to find here in the States, especially here in Chinatown. So today I'm going to be doing it with Thai basil, which is actually a pretty close substitute. The main differences we'll be talking through too in a bit. So if you have any questions for me, feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer everyone. I don't know everything about Thai Pad Gra Prow, but I know lots of stuff, so hopefully I can be helpful or informative or at the very least entertaining to watch. So if you're looking for it, as always with pretty much everything that we cook on stream, there's a recipe video that goes along with what we're cooking today. The recipe for this particular dish came out over on the YouTube channel last Friday, so if you're looking for that, or if you're at the very least trying to reproduce what we're cooking, definitely make your way over there and check out what's coming up, because we've got new stuff that's coming out every Friday. So last Friday was this recipe. This Friday coming up is one of the maybe the most requested thing that has come up on the channel, which is a video dedicated to pantry basics that's coming up this Friday. We're kicking off a brand new series where we're going to be talking through a lot of the really fundamental stuff that we use in a lot of like mostly Chinese cooking, but just generally in wok cooking. We're going to walk our way through, no pun intended, all of those specifics. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely make your way over to the YouTube channel and check out what's going on over there. We're working our way up to 5,500 subs by the end of the month. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over and subscribe. Lots of cool stuff coming. You watched the show twice and you ended up ordering Chinese food. Yeah, I guess that's a good result. Ideally, though, you should be cooking. But you can do that too, though. You take holy basil like a capsule. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, holy basil. It's here in California at the very least, or at least more specifically, probably not in all of California, but more specifically here in Oakland, Chinatown. It's pretty difficult to track down. I bet that I could find it if I tried really, really hard. I would probably have to go to, I don't think that there is a grocery store dedicated to Thai food here, but there is a grocery store that's dedicated to Vietnamese food, and you often find a lot of Thai stuff there. So I think that's probably the best place that I'm going to find holy basil. But outside of that, a lot of those really iconic Thai ingredients, I personally have a lot of trouble tracking that down. And I guess maybe more importantly, I also know that lots of people who watch this series, they have a lot of trouble tracking down, I think just in general, a lot of the ingredients that we use. So I'm a big proponent of subs and swaps. Kevin, how's it going? Hello. Hello everyone on YouTube. So as with not everything, but almost everything that we cook on this series, I'm starting off, that was 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic. You'll notice that we are skipping the ginger today. And that's for a particular reason. It's not because I ran out. I actually always have ginger on hand. But the reason that we're skipping it today is because it's actually not super commonly found in a lot of Thai food. So I'm skipping it because it's actually pretty off base if you include too much ginger and too much Thai food. So I'm going to skip it today. I think if you're going to include an aromatic, it probably should be garlic. And if you're going to include a second aromatic, what I like to include is these Thai chilies. Some folks have asked me about how hot or how how spicy or how much capsaicin is in a Thai chili, which I would say is it's pretty spicy. It's not a mild chili, so I would not compare it to say like a jalapeno pepper, which to me is like really, really mild. So a Thai chili, it packs some punch. So what I always say is, if you're particularly averse to spicy stuff, go easy on the stuff because it is particularly spicy. Ooh, any rabbit? No, not yet. That's a tricky one. I definitely would have a lot of trouble tracking down rabbit. I have no idea where I would even find rabbit. I would have to look into that. That would be cool. We could do like some rabbit stews. That would be really fun. But no, I haven't experimented too much with rabbit. So for today's wok fry, that was our garlic and then our Thai chilies, which we sliced up thinly. Today I'm using 4 Thai chilies, which is about like a medium heat, in my experience at least. But again, if you're new to Thai chilies, I always say is go easy on it and then dial it up or down depending on your preference. Next up, this is some shallots, or actually just 1 shallot singular. I think the original recipe that we did, it included 2 shallots, but it included 2 shallots, but I actually took some of them out because I thought it was too many shallots. So we're going with 1 shallot today, and this is actually a really, really large shallot. I think it will be okay. But if you're particularly averse to shallots, I also just realized I'm chopping this the wrong way. If you're averse to shallots, don't go easy on this stuff too. A shallot, unlike an onion, it packs a little bit more punch, so it's a little bit more concentrated, and it has a little bit more weight to it. It's a little bit more fragrant. Particularly if you don't like onions, go easy on these shallots. So I'm slicing these up real thinly, or as thinly as we can imagine. And then we're going to set these aside. These are going to go into our wok fry. This will be maybe the last thing that we add here today. What kind of knife is it? Yeah, lots of people ask about this knife. This knife is a French chef's knife. It's called Père Nogent. It's pretty difficult to find because it's like a really random. It's a copy of a more famous French knife called a sabatier. The sabatier is probably going to be a little bit easier to find. They generally, for the carbon steel ones, where if you find it vintage, probably about $200. But sabatier, because it's still in production, you can actually get it right off the shelf. I think you can find that stuff at like Macy's and stuff, which I thought is cool. So yeah, if you're looking for, what I always say is if you're looking for a knife like this, the profile of this like long, thin profile, that's a French chef knife sort of thing. So look into French chef's knives. If you're looking for this particular knife, you're probably going to have better luck finding the sabatier. All right, so that's our shallots. We're going to set these aside. And then next up, we're going to take a look at our green beans, or string beans, or depending on who you ask. Today I'm just using the packaged stuff because I'm lazy. A string bean and a green bean, they're the same thing. Depending on where you are in the world, they're going to be called one or the other. Most commonly when you find them in grocery stores, it will generally have this part pulled off, which I just realized. This one is still attached. This is probably a mistake in the back. But generally you'll see this bit pulled off. It's like the stem. That's always very handy. If it does still come attached, just slice it up. Mostly what we're looking for today is we're trying to make sure that our string beans or green beans are sliced in similar sizes. So we're going to give these a slice. We're going to go for about 1-inch pieces or so, which usually, depending on the length of the green bean, is going to be about thirds. We're going to chop them into thirds. You thought shallots are milder than onions. No, they're a little bit more concentrated. So a lot of times you'll see them in things like, so they come up in a lot of Thai cooking. You'll see them in a lot of places where aromatics are really essential. So what I always say is that like lots of times you'll see I'll substitute a shallot in or swap a shallot out for like a red onion or something, which is not necessarily the perfect substitute, but if you have to, it's probably going to be fine. What I always say is that if you are going to substitute that out, because it's a little bit less punchy, use a little bit more onion. So I would use like maybe a quarter, maybe like half of an onion for a whole shallot, which is going to be a little bit more shallot than onion. But yeah. But yeah, so lots of times you'll see them come up in a lot of Thai food. There's a lot of stems on these green beans today. You'll see them come up in a lot of Thai food. Like you'll see them in a lot of like pre-mixed stuff too. So like if you ever get your hands on like pad Thai sauce, like the pre-mixed pad Thai sauce, that sort of stuff, you'll generally see those things, including shallot, because it's so commonly found in so many Thai dishes. So cool, yeah. Navy Chef, yeah, what are we cooking? Yeah, so hello to everyone just tuning in. Today we're cooking a Thai street food classic, which is called Pad Gra Prow. You see, the reason that I call it a Thai street food classic is because it's one of the dishes that you see in a lot of Thai street food night markets. So if you ever go to like Bangkok and go to the night markets there, this is one of those things that you would see in a lot of the street food stalls. Which is, I guess, like the main reason that's important, other than knowing where the food that you're eating comes from, is because of the way that it's presented and plated. So one of the really, really classic things that you see, not just in Thai food, but I think just in street food in general, and like Asian street food in general, but especially in Thai food, but also in Korean food and Chinese food too, is that it's going to be finished with a fried egg, which is like a really, really classic way of finishing off a lot of street food. So we're going to be taking a look at that, and I'm going to show folks how I like to approach a wok fried egg, which is sunny side up and a shallow fry, which is going to be really, really tasty. Love the content. Oh yeah, thank you. Thanks for tuning in. So once again, there are a lot of stems on these green beans. Probably not supposed to do that, but they're probably not supposed to be there, but oh well. What am I listening to? Yes, so I actually have no idea what's playing in the background because I don't have an active feedback of what's playing underneath my voiceover. But it's probably like one of the three tracks that, maybe 3 or 4 tracks that are under the Woo Cooks Beats tunes. So if you're looking for the tracks, that's all lives over on Woo Cooks Beats, which I could link. I guess I should link that. Sure where this is pointing, but this is one of the Woo Cooks Beats tunes. Actually, it looks like it's pointing to the channel. Yeah, that's the Woo Cooks Beats channels. So those are where all of the music that's published or that like plays underneath, like all of the recipe videos and all the live streams and stuff, that lives over on that channel. Cool, so these are my string beans or green beans, depending on who and where in the world you ask. I just gave them a quick wash and a rinse, and then what I'm doing is I'm being very careful. We're shaking out all of this extra water. We're going to be searing these things, which is going to pose 2 different problems. The first is that the more water that you have in a sear, the more difficult you're going to have searing your green beans. But also, most importantly, or at least more just as important, is that if you have water left over in here and you dump it into a wok fry, that wok is going to start sizzling real bad. So cold water plus hot oil equals oil splatters. And oil splatters, we don't want that because you're going to burn yourself. Which I've done many, 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 many times. Cool. Alright, next up is our basil. Ooh, do I like coconut curries? Yeah, I haven't done a coconut curry in a while, but I would definitely be down to do that. I haven't done a curry in a while in general. Maybe we should do a new curry. Yeah, anyway. Cool, so here's my Thai basil. So we're going with Thai basil today. If you can find it, holy basil is probably the most traditional thing to do in a Pad Gra Prow. If you can't find it, Thai basil, it works just as well. The things that I do recommend that you avoid are anything that are like more commonly found in American or like Italian cuisine. So like sweet basil, Italian basil, that stuff. You don't want to try those because those are like a completely different palate. They have very, very different aromatic qualities. So if you can't find Thai basil and all you have is sweet basil, I would say is just either skip the basil or probably wait until you find Thai basil. Or if you can't find it, if you really can't find it, then I would say skip the basil and replace it with the things that those aromatic qualities come from. So for me, at least, what I find when I eat Thai basil is that it has a lot of aromatic qualities that have like lots of licorice notes to it. So what I usually do if I forget to buy Thai basil, which happens all the time, is I'll swap it out with some star anise. So I'll add a star anise to my meat marinade, which we're not going to do today because we have all this Thai basil. But in a lot of the times, so like a lot of the times when you see me making like pad see ew or something, or even like pad ki mao, stuff like that, you'll see me swapping in a star anise pod that helps just sort of like replace some of those licorice and like aromatic notes that are supposed to be coming from the Thai basil. So what we're going to do with this is, because since Thai basil is so fragile, we really don't want to overcook this Thai basil, so we're going to add it off heat. So we're going to finish cooking and then we're going to add it on top and then just toss. And then the residual heat from the cook is going to do everything that we need in order to like bloom out these aromatic qualities from our Thai basil. So what we're doing right now is I'm pulling these off of their stems. We don't want these stems, they're really chewy. They're not really edible. Yeah, they're probably edible if you chew on it really hard, but probably for the most part, we want to try and remove all of these stems. And then what's going to happen is that in that residual heat, this Thai basil, it's going to start basically wilting. And then when it wilts, it's going to start releasing all of these nice fragrant and aromatic qualities. So you can't really tell on camera, but it's already very, very fragrant. It has like a very particular scent to it. That is to me, it smells like licorice. Cool, so that's our Thai basil. When I use Thai basil, I just like to use all of it. Unless I have another plan for it, I usually just use all of it, but that's mostly because I actually don't think we need all of it. But the main reason that I use all of it is because you can see it already, it's starting to wilt a little bit. I just got this yesterday and it's already starting to wilt. So if I save it for any longer, probably by tomorrow it's going to be it'll have gone bad by then. So I usually, when I use Thai basil, I just use all of it. I don't bother trying to save it because it's not going to stay anyway. All right. There it is. Cool. Yeah, coconut curries, that sounds like a really good idea. We did, it's actually not one of my recipes, but there's a really great lentil curry recipe that I cook a lot that has a lot of coconut milk in it. And yeah, start messing around with more coconut, I guess. So anyway, I digress. Today what we're going with, this is actually some ground turkey, I think. Mainly because I didn't remember to buy ground chicken. It's not that big of a deal. Honestly, to me, ground turkey and ground chicken, they taste pretty much the same, which is to say they don't really taste like much at all. What I always say is that you could really use any kind of ground mince that you can get your hands on. I have done this dish with ground pork before, and that works really well. You could probably do it with like an 80-20 ground beef chuck. Really what we're looking for is fat content, so I like ground turkey because it's a real fatty cut of ground meat. So I'm going to do a quick marinade here. This is 4 tablespoons of soy sauce to start. This, by the way, is probably the default marinade that you'll see in a lot of Wukan cook recipes, mostly because it's sort of like the recipe that I use when I don't really know what else to do. That's half a teaspoon of white pepper. And then next up, this is going to be half a teaspoon of cornstarch. That cornstarch, what it's going to do, it's going to add a nice little layer of cornstarch to sort of coat our ground mince today. And that's going to really just keep it from overcooking in the wok fry. And then last up, this is a pinch of kosher salt. What I say is that you want to taste or season with kosher salt to taste. Obviously, you can't stop and taste the ground meat right now, so what I always say is about a pinch. But if you're not really sure, lots of times what you'll see is I'll add a little bit of extra salt, and that's mostly compensating for the fact that we're using low sodium soy sauce. So generally what I like to say is adjust accordingly to whatever kind of like the salt content of the soy sauce that you're using yourself. Sorry, that's gonna keep happening. There's nothing we can do about it. All right, so that's our ground meat. We're gonna set this aside. If we're really committed, this should go for about 30 minutes. It's probably not gonna go for 30 minutes, but here we are. By the way, at this point, if you don't have Thai basil and you're trying to sub out, and replace some of those licorice qualities. This is the point where I would say add a star anise pod to this marinade, and it will get you a little bit closer. It's not going to be the same thing, but it will get you a little bit closer. There is no substitute for an entire bunch of Thai basil. That's sort of like the big iconic thing, is that this dish, it has a crazy amount of Thai basil to it. We're using, I don't know, that looks like half a cup of basil, and that's like there's a crazy amount of Thai basil in a pad Gra Prow. So if you don't have that basil, it's going to be maybe the most important ingredient in the whole dish. All right. So last up, before we head over to the stove, I'm going to assemble our sauce base here. And as with most of our wok fries, or most of the sauce bases that we use dark soy sauce in, what I always say is that you want to go very easy on this stuff. Just because we're adding all of this liquid to this bowl does not mean that it has to go into the wok fry. So you'll see when we start cooking, but we're going to add it in small increments and then stop to taste. So I say this a lot anytime that we're using dark soy sauce, but this is especially true just generally all the time, as that stop and season to taste. If it doesn't look like it needs all of that sauce, don't add all of the sauce. It's not the end of the world. So that was 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, a single tablespoon of dark soy sauce. This is a single tablespoon of oyster sauce. And then this is 2 tablespoons of fish sauce. And finally, rounding it all out is going to be 1 tablespoon, excuse me, of brown sugar. So I'm going to mix this up to combine. You'll notice, you can kind of see that on camera, but it is very concentrated. That's because a lot of the things that we just added here are really concentrated. That's also the same reason why we only added a single tablespoon of a lot of those things, like that dark soy sauce and the oyster sauce. That stuff, it's very concentrated, so I can't stress this enough. If it looks like it doesn't need all of it, don't add all of it. You can absolutely over-season with this stuff. Cool, so over on the stove, I've got my wok. We're going to get this thing heated up, and then we can get cooking. Lots of questions. Am I Thai? No, I'm a Chinese American. Taiwanese American, I guess, technically. What are we making? Yeah, today we're doing a Thai street food dish. It's called pad Gra Prow, or like here in the States, you'll probably see it more colloquially referred to as like Thai basil chicken, or some kind of colloquialism to that effect. Generally referring to the crazy amount of basil that's in this dish. But it is not like sweet basil or Italian basil that you would more commonly see in like a lot of American cuisine. It's more of a licorice quality that you get from the basil that we're using today. We're using Thai basil. More iconically, you will probably see it done with holy basil, which is really hard to find. I literally have no idea where to find holy basil here in Oakland. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. And as always, with everything that we cook, there's also a recipe video that lives over on the YouTube channel. Those are out every Friday. So last Friday, we came out with the recipe for this pad Gra Prow. And if you're looking for that stuff, definitely head over there. They're out every Friday. We're working our way up to 5,500 subscribers by the end of the month, which is very soon, and we're very far away from that goal, so I don't think we're going to hit it. But if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over and give it a subscribe. This Friday coming up, we have an episode that's actually, it's probably like one of the most requested episodes of the whole series, which is an episode dedicated to pantry basics. So you'll notice that behind me, this is my pantry, and there's a whole crap load of stuff in here. It's a bunch of random shit. Some of that's like oatmeal and stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that's in my pantry that I use to like build out this sauce, which is what we just used. That was like oyster sauce, dark soy sauce, fish sauce, some soy sauce. a couple of other things, but lots of times people ask me, what are all these things? Why are you using so many of them? Questions like that. So I made a whole episode that's dedicated to just kind of like talking through what are all of these sauces and why are there so many of them? What do they do? What's the purpose of using all of these things, and can you sub them out? So people ask me that all the time, so we made a whole video for it. That's coming out this Friday, so if you haven't yet, definitely hop over to the YouTube and give it a subscribe, because I'm really excited for that video. I think it took me a long time to make this, because it's hard to sort through like all of there's a lot of shit in that pantry, and to talk about all of it in 12 minutes is crazy. So yeah, cool. Kevin, whiskey time. Yeah, actually whiskey. I think we're running low on whiskey actually. Whiskey time later. Let's see. Yeah, we're low on whiskey, but I will drink some bourbon now. Yeah. Do I stream on any other channels besides YouTube? Yeah. So generally, this is pretty much true anytime that I'm streaming. The first stream, well, there's two different streams going on. So there's the one that I'm talking to you. This is the one that I'm facing. This stream goes to Reddit. The one behind me, it goes to YouTube. So BB, you're watching on YouTube. That's the YouTube channel. We're also streaming over on Reddit, which is, I think, going to Reddit in the Kitchen. I think that's a subreddit. I don't know why I said I think. That's a subreddit that channels to lots of like live streaming in the kitchen. So yeah, two different places, almost always. Ooh, that needs some ice. Bourbon neat. All right. So I've got my wok heated up real hot, or about as hot as a wok is gonna get. Then we're gonna add our oil here. Today we're using grapeseed oil because we're running out of peanut oil. Lots of people ask, this is actually something that we're going to cover in the Pantry Basics episode, but lots of people ask me about what types of oil to use. Most iconically, you'll probably see stir fries like this done with peanut oil, which works really, really well in wok fries because it has a nice aromatic quality to it. Today we're using grapeseed oil because I ran out of peanut oil, but also grapeseed oil, a really, really great oil to use for wok frying. Mostly because it does really well on high heat, so it's not going to burn for you. But also because it has a very, very neutral quality to it, so it's not going to impart any odd qualities that we're not looking for. Cool. All right, so going in first, these are my aromatics. That's my garlic, followed by my Thai chilies. A little bit of water. Then I'm giving that a quick toss, just long enough until it comes and blooms those aromatic qualities out. Then we're adding, this is our ground meat going in. So this is our ground turkey more specifically. And then what I'm just doing at this point is just sort of breaking up these large clumps. And the other, maybe just as important, what I like to do at this point is also get that garlic really, really tossed in more cohesively. If we don't get that garlic mixed in and it sort of just sits on the bottom of the wok there, it's eventually going to start burning. So we want to make sure that once we add that ground mince, that we give that wok a nice good toss, which is helpful to do with the wok toss. But if you don't know how to wok toss, you can also just scoop in and literally turn it. That'll work too. Yeah. Of course, if you're trying to impress folks, the wok toss, it's gonna work better. All right. So we don't need this to cook all the way through, but we do want it to be mostly cooked through. Usually I'm looking for 10% cooked. It's gonna start coming into play. It's gonna help make sure that our ground mince doesn't overcook on us. And then very, very important, this is not necessarily true for all wok cooking, but it's going to be true for a lot of the wok cooking that happens on home ranges with dishes that have a lot of ingredients like this one. Is that we're going to pull things out. So this is a process we call batch cooking, where we remove stuff pretty periodically. And that's to prevent that wok from losing too much heat. Because as things start filling up, what's happening is the wok's temperature starts cooling down because there's so much stuff in the wok. So in a dish like this, because we're cooking so many things, more specifically, we still have to cook those green beans, which requires quite a bit of heat. Is that we want to empty that wok out before we start cooking those green beans. Otherwise, the green bean is going to end up cooking on medium to medium-low heat. Cars and furries. Yeah, what's in the bowl? Yeah, so that was our ground mince. More specifically, that was our ground turkey. More iconically, it's also in the name. This would be done with ground chicken, but I forgot to get ground chicken, so here we are. So here's our green beans. We're going to add these. This is another reason why that wok, it's got to be empty here. Is because what we're going to try and do, we are going to do, is sear these. So what I like to do is spread them out nice and evenly here. Really what we're trying to do is make sure that we don't have, as best as we possibly can, green beans that are sitting on top of each other, like this one right here. We don't want that. We want all of these green beans, or as many as possible, to be making good, solid contact with the surface of the wok. Because if it's not making contact with that wok, it's just going to end up searing at this, or steaming at this point, which is not what we're looking for. We want those green beans to get a nice solid sear, in which that really requires contact with the surface of the wok. Yeah. Yeah, what is it? Yeah, so we're making a Thai street food dish. It's called Pad Gra Prow, or Thai basil chicken, something to that effect. More colloquially, you'll probably see it referred to as like Thai basil or something like that. What it is essentially a combination or a stir fry that leans pretty heavily on the aromatic Thai basil, which has a more of a licorice quality to it than your more standard like sweet basil or like Italian basil. Right now, what we're doing is we're searing our vegetable elements. So these are our string beans. I have seen many Pad Gra Prows that omit the string beans entirely. I personally like to include a little bit of extra veggie in this dish because otherwise it's basically just ground meat, and I'm trying to cook less, eat less meat. So nice cough. Yeah. So yeah, that was actually another thing that I was about to bring up too. So when you're cooking with Thai chilies, which is very, very often for me, very, very important. You also notice that I just opened up a window that I forgot to open up. Open up your windows, super, super important, because the Thai chilies, especially if you don't de-seed them, the capsaicin, it releases when you start cooking it. And then when that releases and you start breathing it in, that's essentially the equivalent of what you're basically inhaling is pepper spray. That's how pepper spray is made. So very, very important when you start stir frying that stuff. Make sure that you have nice, clear, open windows. So I have 3 windows next to me right here. And that's going to be really important if you're cooking Thai chilies. Who have watched these streams know that every time that I cook with Thai chilies, almost 100% of the time I cough, which is really annoying. Yeah. So we're searing our green beans here. What I like to do, I do this with most of the things that we sear in a wok fry. And this needs a little bit more oil. What I like to do is give the wok a nice little rotation. That's essentially just moving that oil around. And that's going to make sure that our oil is getting to all parts of that string beans. If you're not careful, what will happen is that it will get and it will build up right here in the center, but this outer area where our green beans are on the outside, it's not going to sear quite as well. So I'm giving this a quick toss. You'll notice yeah, you can see it. Well, you can see it on YouTube. Is that our string beans have picked up all of this nice searing and color here. This is really, really important. That's what we're going for, is that nice sear. All right. So last up, I'm going to add, this is about a 1/4 cup of water, maybe a little bit less than that. And then what we're going to do is top that off with a cap. And we're going to let that steam for 90 seconds. We want to be real short with that steam. If it goes for too long, that steam is going to turn into a really, really aggressive steam, and then we're going to have mushy string beans, which is not what we're after here. Yeah. So you will often see me doing this with very many veggies. String beans are basically the only veggie that I stand by doing that steam with. Other vegetables like broccoli, I actually find that it works really, really well when that broccoli stays nice and crunchy. With a string bean, though, I actually personally find that string beans are almost inedible if they're too crunchy. But it's totally up to you. If you like a crunchy string bean, you can skip this part. Super often, that's kind of like a classic way of eating like a wok fried veggies. It's going to be still very, very crispy and almost like not quite raw, but like adjacent to raw. So just past the raw stage is what I like to call it. You just cook yourself a 2-day-old pizza in the microwave. There's nothing wrong with that. Actually, what I would say is if you have 2-day-old pizza, you don't need to microwave it. Just eat it. Just eat it cold. Cold pizza is better than microwave pizza. Although I will say is that I just did learn of a new hack for reheating pizza, which is in a cast iron skillet, which is basically like searing the pizza in a cast iron skillet and then adding a little bit of water to steam it. And I heard that it results in the closest that you will get to fresh pizza from day-old pizza. There's a little bit of wok. So I'm removing that cap. I'm going to give those green beans a little bit of a toss just to burn off the remaining water. So there's always going to be a little bit of residual water anytime you steam like that. So what I like to do is just give it a little toss and then give it maybe 20-30 seconds, and that's going to be just enough time to burn off that remaining water, whatever water didn't kind of cook off. What are we drinking? Yeah, today we're drinking Woodford, which is a bourbon. Maybe my favorite bourbon, but it's the reason it's my favorite bourbon is because to me it tastes like a scotch, which is not a good reason to like it. But yeah, it's also pretty cheap. If you get it in a bar, you could probably find it for about $10. And then I think by bottle it's maybe like $30. You're from Brazil. Hey, how's it going? That's cool. Hello from Brazil. Hello in Brazil, not from Brazil. So there's our shallots going in. I'm giving that a real quick toss. Again, we want to remember that we cut these shallots pretty thin, so they don't need to cook that long. We're just really, again, just trying to cook off a little bit of rawness and kind of just take off some of that bite. And we're really trying to keep those shallots nice and crispy here, so we don't want to overcook them. We don't want mushy or caramelized shallots at this point. We really just want to keep them as crispy and fresh as possible. You're taking a few vodka shots. Yeah, I haven't drank vodka in a while. Not since college. Yeah, feed you. We can totally feed you. Thank you, yeah. So hopefully at this point that water should have burned off by now, so really we should just be cooking in oil now. That's also pretty important at this point because those shallots are going to start giving off their own water here, so we don't want any extra water at this point. Once we're done steaming, we want as much of that water to burn off as possible. Alright, that's looking good. There's our ground meat going back into the wok. And then finally, I'm following this up with our sauce, which I mentioned earlier, and I'll say it again, is we want to be very careful not to over-season at this point. So you'll notice that I'm adding, that's about a couple tablespoons, maybe 2 tablespoons or so at a time. We're going around the sides, and we're just letting things combine. And I'm paying attention to a couple of things. Mainly what I'm looking at is the color and consistency of our stir fry. So if it's looking like it's getting a little too dark, we're going to stop seasoning. I don't think that it's going to need all of this. I think that's going to be it. pretty good. All right, so last up, I'm killing the heat here. Very, very important. We're killing the heat. So there is no remaining cook happening at this point. And then we're adding that Thai basil. So we're now on no heat. And then we're just gonna toss that basil in. So very, very important. We don't need to do that basil over heat because it's going to wilt all on its own because it's so fragile. So really what we're just using at this point is the residual heat from our cook. And that's going to bloom out all of those aromatic qualities from that basil for us. Yeah. All right, so last thing that we're gonna do, actually second to last thing that we're gonna do, and this is a very, very iconic thing that you'll see not just in Thai street food cooking, but in like a lot of Asian street food cooking. Actually, someone mentioned earlier today is that it's a very, very common thing to see in a lot of Asian street food or just Asian street food in general, that you will finish a dish with a fried egg, which is what we're gonna do. And this is actually my favorite way of making a fried egg, is in a round bottom wok like this one, and I'm gonna show you why. Yeah. So what we're going to do here, so I have my round bottom wok. We're going to reheat this wok. And a couple of things that I want to point out. So you'll notice that the wok has no flat bottom. So this is just a rounded, curved area. I'm not going to touch it because it's very hot. And that's also the reason, by the way, that you'll notice that my wok kind of just rolls around a lot. If we're not careful, it'll like spin. That's because it's rounded at the bottom. It doesn't have a flat bottom. Flat bottom is probably more commonly found in a lot of like home wok cooking because number one, because it's more stable, but number two, because it behaves a little bit more like a skillet, the skillets that you would more commonly come across. So it's also a little bit more stable and a little bit less annoying because this is a little bit hard to get used to. And I have on many occasions flipped it right off the stovetop. So, but it does have a couple of benefits. And my favorite benefit about it is that because it has this rounded bottom, the oil also has a quality that just happens to cause it to pull up right here at the bottom because it's basically just got this little cone shape at the bottom. So that's really, really useful for a technique called shallow frying, which is basically something that you would do, and most of the time you would do it in like a skillet or something. It's basically a technique that's sort of like, kind of like deep fry. I guess it's the opposite of deep frying, where we're gonna deep fry, but we're gonna do it in a very, very little amount of oil. So most often, if you did that in a skillet, it would still take at least half a cup of oil, maybe more. Because you have to, depending on how big the skillet is, you have to fill up the whole skillet. We're going to do that, but we're going to do this in probably like 4 tablespoons of oil, maybe less. Because you'll notice, so I just added our oil here. We're going to do a quick long yao. And then you'll notice that our oil, it's pulling up right here. Also our spatula here. So all of this oil is pulling up right here. Also make sure that your spatula is dry, otherwise that will happen. Oh, how did I get the wok? Yeah, so this wok, it comes from a restaurant supply store. So what I always say is actually, if you're here in Oakland, it came from a restaurant supply store that's been really, really like good for the community. It's called Shanko on 7th and Webster, I think. 7th and Franklin, maybe. So if you're looking for restaurant supply stuff here in Oakland, that's a good spot to go to. But what I always say, because probably most of you guys are not in Oakland, is that most Chinatown districts, they're going to have something very, very similar because they're the supply store that's supplying restaurant goods to the Chinese restaurants in the area. So if you're looking for a good wok, just go out and find that restaurant supply store. Restaurant owners, where do they get their stuff? So we're adding our egg in here. I'm going to add a pinch of salt. And then you'll notice, so we have on high heat. So this is going to be, if you're familiar with the properties of frying an egg, one of the, there's like a big difference that happens between frying an egg over high heat and frying an egg over low heat. When you fry eggs over high heat, they puff up and they get really, really lacy like this. And then what I like to do is we're going to spoon that hot oil on top. And that's basically just going to help the yolks sort of set a little bit. And then what you'll notice is happening here is that on the sides, we have all of this lacy, crispy qualities happening here. That's what we're looking for. So I'm gonna do, this is gonna be 3 eggs I'm gonna do. There's our second egg going in. Wok ASMR, oh that's a good one. We should do some ASMR on the YouTube channel. Or just like close mic the wok, that would be cool. So here's our second egg. I'd like to avoid some of these bubbles, that's a little bit too much. And you'll notice once again all of this oil is sort of like pooling up around the sides. That's really, really useful for a fried egg like this because it helps us create this really, really lacy quality. If we tried to do this in a stir fry, like a frying pan, this would take a lot more oil, probably like half a cup of oil at least, in order to get the egg to submerge this way. Yeah. Oh, you lived up Park Street. Yeah, actually Park Street, that's where all the Thai you could probably find some of these Thai ingredients off of Park Street. Not because there's Thai grocery stores, that's because Park Street, that's where all the Vietnamese grocery stores are. And there's enough overlap in Vietnamese cuisine where you can find a lot of Thai ingredients in those Vietnamese restaurants. So things like galongal root, kaffir lime leaf, both of those two things, they come up in both Vietnamese and Thai food, so I find that in that neighborhood a lot. Right, I'm going to do one more egg here. Yeah. Oh, you're in Texas, but up north they have lots of stores like that. Yeah, definitely go head over to the nearest Chinatown, because those Chinese restaurants, they're not ordering stuff on Amazon. They're getting it somewhere. So just go to a Chinese restaurant and ask them where they're getting their stuff. So like, where do they get their teapots and plates and like forks, but also where do they get all their cookware? Where are those woks coming from? All the spiders, kitchenware, all that stuff. They got to be getting it from somewhere. They're probably not getting it online. I'm almost certain they're not getting it online. So just you go to the nearest Chinatown and there's going to be something. But if you're in Oakland, Chenko and on 7th and Webster, that's where all of the Chinese restaurants in our neighborhood get that stuff from. So the other great thing about Chinese restaurant supply stores is that stuff is really cheap there. So I think I got this wok for like 15 bucks. And because we have a food pop-up, we actually have 5 of these. And so I think we got like all 5 of the woks for like under $100. Really good. All right. So I'm going to clear out my wok here. So very, very important. Before we clear out this wok, you'll notice there's lots of oil hanging behind. What we don't want to do, this does not go down our drain here. What we want to do is we want to have a grease trap of some kind. And this is going to be for dumping used cooking oil. So, that's maybe like 2-3 tablespoons of oil. It can technically go down your drain, but eventually, if you do that enough times, it's eventually just going to clog your drain. So we want to make sure that cooking oil doesn't end up down our drain. Otherwise, you're going to be calling a plumber pretty soon. And then, if you do have residual oil, this is a great time to season your wok. So give it a little bit of a spread with a paper towel. Go for the bottom side too to make sure that we don't cause anything to rust. That ought to do it. Among Us for silver. I don't know what that means. All right. Okay then, sure, yeah. All right, let's pull this in. One of these other eggs looks better. I'm gonna use one of these. Awkward hippie music experience. I'm cool with awkward hippie music experience. Thank you, though. So, a couple of things that we'll notice. So, you'll notice all of these lacy qualities here happening around the edges of our egg. That's happening from that really, really high heat of the wok. That number one thing that creates comes from the really, really high heat of that wok. But the other part that really assists in it is that a lot of the egg is submerged under oil for like the majority of that cook. So that's really, really assisted by the fact that we have that rounded bottom on the wok, which is why one of my favorite ways of doing a fried egg is in one of those rounded bottom woks like that. Yeah. Cool. Thanks everyone for tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in, we're here every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 PST with new recipes. Those are out over on my YouTube channel every Friday. So last Friday we came out with the recipe for this pad Gra Prow, which is like a ground chicken stir fry that's done most iconically in holy basil, which is a Thai basil that's like has a lot of like licorice-y qualities, more of like just like a very like fragrant licorice quality to it. Today we substituted that with some Thai basil, which is a pretty common substitute here in the States, because I honestly have no idea where to find holy basil. But also a very, very common substitute. It's also like the really, really iconic ingredient that goes into a dish like this. So there's what otherwise I would call an ungodly amount of Thai basil in this dish. That was an entire bushel of Thai basil, literally the entire package, and it actually just wilted into it. So lots of times I've even seen dishes or versions of this that don't even have the green bean, so it's literally just Thai basil plus ground mince, which is crazy. But that dish, that recipe, it lives over on the YouTube channel, so if you're looking for that recipe, that's going to move a little bit slower and kind of walks our way through, no pun intended, the whole dish, and kind of like takes a look at how to make this in a little bit slower and more deliberate fashion. So if you're looking for that stuff, it lives over on YouTube. We have new recipes. Those are coming out every Friday. This Friday coming up is going to be a YouTube video, a video that lots and lots of people have been asking for this video since I started. Basically since I started the channel, but more specifically since I started live streaming. People have been asking for a pantry basics episode, so you'll notice that behind me there's this whole pantry and it's filled with a whole bunch of crap. Some people call it a collection of stuff. I actually don't consider that a collection because I use it all the time. I don't think that's a collection. But Lots of people have been asking me, like, because there's so many things that go into the recipes that we use, is that what are the important ones, or like what are the ones if you're just starting out, what are the things that you should stock, what are the auxiliary ones. There are definitely auxiliary ones, stuff that you can omit, things that you can substitute, things that you can switch in and out, that kind of make these recipes a little bit easier. I think, like, for me, what's most important about substituting and like just generally in Chinese cooking in general is that it's not just about having all of the ingredients, but it's more about like what do those ingredients do, and that's going to give you like informed knowledge about like what's actually happening when I leave something out. So you'll know when you leave a certain ingredient out, what's going to happen and then why is it so important, and if it's not that important to you, then you can omit it. So stuff like that, that's coming up in the Pantry Basics episode that's coming up this Friday. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely head over to the YouTube channel. Check out what's coming up soon. So that one's coming up this Friday. Next Friday is going to be xiaolongbao, which is a Chinese soup dumpling. That's another really, really highly requested one. Also one that I've been avoiding for a super long time because those things are really hard to make. Like, I want to say the hardest thing is that I have ever tried to make is that xiaolongbao. So, but I'm super stoked that's coming out next Friday too. So lots of fun stuff like that coming up. So if you are interested, head over to the YouTube, give it a subscribe. We're working our way up to 5,500 subscribers. So if you're interested, definitely check it out. Oh, and lastly, the most important thing is the egg brick. Let's pull it all the way in. Not the greatest egg brick. Some of that's set already. Still pretty good egg brick though. Cool. All right, thanks everyone. Tune in this coming Thursday. Oh, no stream this Thursday because we're prepping. Oh, it's the last thing I'll mention. So we do have this food pop-up. It's also called Wu Can Cook, where we've been cooking a lot of the fried rices that come from these streams in the recipe or the YouTube series. We have this pop-up. It's popping up all over the Bay Area. This coming Friday, we're doing our very first pop-up in the city of Oakland proper at Oakland First Friday. So if you're here in the Bay Area, come find us. We're going to be at on First Friday. I'm not sure where our stall is yet, but we're going to be doing the First Friday event 5 to 9 p.m. On Friday. So come find us. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you soon. Bye.
If you think that you don't know, never mind, that you still don't love yourself, no. You can find it from somebody else, no. Everybody's got to go up. Sometimes funny how we shoot the mood. Still, will we fight it, baby? Alright, never mind. Everybody wants to be they still got streets, but they don't love me like they used to love it. And I'm reminded of how bad I used to want it. And yes, I still got streets, but more like a junkie of my 20s, and it's breaking me down. Oh, no. tasty whiskey. You're as sweet as strawberry wine. Your bed warm, glass of brandy, darling, I'll stay stoned on your love all the time.